Hey, my friends, welcome to Word Made Digital. I'm your host, Joanna LaFleur. This is episode 13 of season 2, and today we have Paul Bartlett on the show. Paul and his wife are the lead pastors of Lighthouse Church in Australia, and he's also part of the state executive for Australian Christian churches in New South Wales. For reference, that's actually the denomination that Hillsong has more recently stepped away from to become independent. So he is part of the leadership of the denomination that Hillsong has been part of for years and years. And he's actually recently written a book called Thank God It's Monday. It's all about living every day, not just that one Sunday of the week, but living every day with purpose and on mission for God. So he has some really interesting and insightful things to share with us today about, in a post-Christian culture, how to reach people and talk about all the days of the week as Christians. So thanks so much to our sponsor of all of season 2, Wycliffe College. It's my alma mater, actually. I went there myself, if you haven't heard that yet, and it's an evangelical graduate school of theology at the University of Toronto. It's really affordable and flexible theological education. So if you're thinking about maybe wanting to dive more into studying the Bible or getting more comfortable in pastoral work or theology and thinking around Christian thought in a post-Christian culture, this is an amazing place to do that. It's one of the main reasons that I went. I did it as a complement to a business and communications degree, and really as a foundation for my whole career. It gave me a vocabulary for my faith that I could use to teach others and to communicate about the good news of Jesus in a way that approach the culture with respect and intelligence. And it really just gave me a context too of the history of the church, the context of scriptures in light of itself, the whole Bible, not just chunks of it. And hey, I would love you to consider taking a class and try it out. It's actually really affordable. If you're looking to do something with seminary, I'd love for you to check them out. You can contact me anytime too. If you're looking about Wycliffe or other schools like it, maybe you have questions, I'd love to chat with you. There's a special interview that they've published too with me for you on wycliffecollege.ca/wordmadedigital. The link's in the show notes below. And if you're wondering about Wycliffe, there's a great conversation there you can check out and then browse around, check out other links on the page. Or also maybe you just want to message me. I'd love to talk to you more about Wycliffe, because I'm hearing more and more that some of you who are listening are now going to Wycliffe. You're taking a course, or I know a couple of you just dive right in and you're doing a full course load this fall, but maybe some of you just want to get your feet wet and check something out. Would love you to do that and consider Wycliffe College for that. All right, here is my conversation with Paul Bartlett.
Welcome to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur. You're listening to Season 2, sponsored by Wycliffe College. Word Made Digital brings you interviews with brilliant Christian creatives and communicators to inspire, challenge, and equip you in your own work. The church carries the best news in the world, so we want to help you be the best creatives and communicators in the world. Here we go.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I'm so glad to have you.
Oh, thanks, Joanna. It's so great to be here. Now, I've got to ask, am I the first Australian you've interviewed?
Well, you're the first full Australian. I interviewed in season 1. There was an interview with Carolee Fielding, who's at Hillsong Church, and she's Canadian, right, but she's lived in Australia much of her life now, and she has a bit of a muddled accent.
Okay. Well, so technically I am the first Australian.
That's true.
Great. Well, it's great to be with you.
Well, obviously, on the conversation today, I want to get to the conversation about this whole movement you're doing. Thank God it's Monday. But right off the top, what I love is that we're talking to you while we're recording. It's Monday morning, and you've just come off of a 10-week break, a 10-week sabbatical.
I know. How great is my church? Let me escape for 10 weeks.
Well, yeah. So tell us about how you're feeling this morning. You're coming back into work. What's your world look like right now in your life and your work?
Well, look, it's fantastic, and I mean, extra special today. I mean, I personally love Mondays anyway, but to come back after 10 weeks, I'm ready to go. Look, one of the things we've learned over the years, my wife and I have been in leadership and ministry for many years. We just, about 8 years ago, had our first sabbatical, and it was so good for us, so good for our church, that our eldership agreed that every 7 years we could have up to 3 months off if we wanted to. And for me, I just feel like, we don't want to get sidetracked here, but pastors are probably one of the fewer occupations that bother to get, personal mentoring, personal help, sit down with somebody, talk about what's happening. And yet all the other professional industries get that sort of personal development help. And so we've just agreed that if we're going to do this long term, we're going to put all the safety measures around us to stay healthy, stay well. And for me, I got to travel when I have a break. So, we traveled around the world and we had a fantastic time. And what happens is your team, I leave my team behind. We have a large church and they all rise and actually excel at what they do. So to me, there's no bad thing. And then the church, because my church people love me more when I come home because they miss me.
You've been gone long enough for them to miss you.
Right. Yeah. And then all the new people wonder who I am.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I would imagine, in today's culture, in some ways, there will be people who barely even noticed you were gone because of their own sort of cycles of attending. If they only came once every month or so, they may not even noticed you left.
I know. It's very good for my ego.
Yeah, I'm sure.
When I arrive back in my church and people ask me who I am.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so, I'd love to tell us a little bit about your ministry context, your working context. You do a few things.
I do a few things, and if you ask my wife, probably too many things. But I guess I'm very purpose-driven. And so that probably sits at the seat of the whole idea of Thank God It's Monday. Look, I guess I started out my career as a carpenter and a builder, and kind of went into full-time ministry around 30 years of age, which all my non-Christian friends, they're kind of like, so, hang on a sec, so you're a carpenter, you're going into ministry at age 30, some of them would say, just be careful at 33, don't hang around any wooden crosses or anything, So it was kind of, they sort of thought I had the Messiah complex or something. But look, I'm very practical. So when I got into church world, I started to wonder why everything seemed very super spiritual and why we couldn't collide the concept of spirituality and everyday work. And that there seemed to be, nobody was saying it, but it seemed to be like a subtle separation between what we did on Sunday and what we did on Monday. And then it started to feel, the more I became a pastor, the more I saw this almost over-reliance on. Now, I love Sundays, by the way, and so this is not about forget Sundays, love Mondays. But what it is about is how does the presence of God that you feel on Sunday stay the same when you wake up Monday morning? Because it feels like going to work is a lesser thing than going to church. And so that was, honestly, in my church, it just started to brew in me, and I started to tell my church, what if your work is your calling? What if the highest calling is not to become a pastor like me? What if it is to be a builder and go and do it with purpose? What it is to be a doctor, a nurse, educator? And what if you do that with the same passion and purpose that I do my pastoring, on a Sunday? And so we just started talking about it. Next thing we knew, it burst into a movement. I didn't start talking about it in my own church. I started talking about our own state, and now I'm doing it nationally and now globally. So it's incredible what God is doing to take that thought across the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously resonating with people. As you're saying, it's grown sort of naturally. You weren't coming with some major strategic plan, the business plan of how we're going to build this thing, and yet people have connected to it and connected to you because of it. What is it? What are people resonating with? Do you think that seems to be more universal?
Yeah, well, look, one of the things I did, our story is this, that my wife's father started our church nearly 50 years ago now, and we've been the senior pastors there for about 18 years. And I started my church, at that point it was a church of about 500 people, and the moment I became senior pastor, and I kind of was brought up in a revival-focused church, and I always say this, I'm interested in revival, but I'm not sure if it's a God concept, because my church was obsessed with the concept of revival, but it preoccupied or distracted us from actually going into the community and reaching people for Jesus. So we would often stand on the platform praying people in, from the north, the south, the east, the west. But we're 100 metres from the biggest railway station in our city. People have to walk past our door to come into our church, but for all the prayer, for all the talk of revival, nobody accidentally walked in. And so I kind of grew up under that culture, right? So I said to myself, if I ever get the chance, I'm going to help build the kind of church where it doesn't exist to hope that people will come in, but it exists to send people out. And so I started preaching my first year of being senior pastor. I started preaching to my church, what if it's not about you? What if now that you're saved, it's about God and others? And I thought that was a pretty awesome message, 500 people. Well, in the next 2 years, I grew my church from 500 to 300.
I love that.
Because you know what? I figured out, unfortunately, it was about them. And I figured out it was about their favourite seat. It was about their favourite song. It was about their favourite car space. And if I dare move any of those, we're not staying around.
Right.
And so I had to be willing to lose people to regrow my church. But, the good news for us, 18 years on, we have a very focused church. And the key is not that we're running lots of community programs. The key is that I taught everybody at Lighthouse, our church, that when they go to work, it's the most dynamic calling they will ever do. And that God, the same God they met on Sunday, is the same God they meet on Mondays.
Right. Tell us a little bit about the cultural climate of Australia. I have a feeling it might be similar to Canada, but for U.S. listeners or people in other countries, give us some context. How does the general public feel about church or Christians?
They don't like it.
Okay.
They don't like it.
It's negative.
So it's a secular nation.
Right.
And I just got back from America, and I'm sure Americans in some ways feel their nation is secular, but really they've got a better God. This is the way I describe it. In America, you could probably ask somebody, do you believe in God? They would say yes, but wouldn't attend church. There is no way an Australian would ever say they believe in God just because that's the right thing to say.
Right. There's no sense of that.
There's no sense of that. So, so I would say Australians are nervous about church. Yeah. So I have a saying here that Australians aren't waking up Sunday morning thinking, what's a great church I can go to? And so one of the emphasis for, thank God it's Monday, is if we as the church are trying to make Sunday so great, in other words, if we can just put up more coloured lights, if we can just have the best guitarist, if we can add more drums, if we get that right, they'll come. Well, that's a myth. So I can tell you that it doesn't matter how many coloured lights you get, in Australia they're just not coming.
Right. I love in your book, Thank God It's Monday, I love the title of one of the chapters. You say they're just not that into you. And it's for me, I'm pulling that as a play off of a book or a movie that's about guys teaching women about, you're throwing yourself at all these guys. They're just not that into you. And it's in the same way, sometimes churches, they look a little desperate maybe. They're trying to do all this stuff to try and get people, but they're just not that into you.
They're not into you. And it's not even, and I know when I say that in churches all over Australia, and I know when I say that they all get a bit shocked. They even look a little bit offended. But it's not. They're not into us because they don't like us or they're not interested in God. They're just not interested in church.
Right.
And
or what it has become in their mind. Yeah. What it
has become in their mind. But even I would say in the last 25 years, I look at things generationally. The last 25 years, definitely a bit more of a performance church, so a great stage. Doing all that well, definitely for a season attracted people, but it's not working anymore. And what we're finding, and we've got in Australia the statistics to prove it, that every time a church gets planted and we plant the same model, so a great Sunday, lots of lights, lots of music, great speaker, what they're doing is they're growing by getting people from other churches, not people from the community. And so while individual churches may look like they grow, the kingdom is not growing at all.
Right. Right. Well, the way we talk about it, the way I talk about it with the senior leadership at our church, because we're culturally quite similar, Canada and Australia. Even before we started recording, we talked about the Commonwealth, and we've got the Queen on our money still, and all this. So it's lots of fun. Yeah. But with the commonality that we have together, but one of the things that I like to say at our church is, when I'm thinking as a communications person and trying to brand creatively and all that kind of stuff, is, it doesn't matter if you have if all you're doing all day is advertising, you have the best hamburger, it's got, the best quality beef from the best cows that are hand fed by the Dalai Lama. Like, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter how great your hamburger is. If everybody in your town has decided that they're a vegan, nobody cares that you have the best hamburger in town.
And it's so true, Joanna. And I think this is the thing. So I would class myself as the accidental leader. So I need to put it out there that when you read TGIM or you come and hear some of our seminars on this stuff, it looks like we knew what we're doing, but we didn't. So I was driven by the one thought that I want to bring dignity to people in my community. Now, what happened was I just went after that. Now, here's a couple of things.
Sorry, when you say your community, do you mean your church community or the greater community?
No, sorry. Yeah, that's a good point, because I know a lot of churches think community. No, I'm talking outside the church community.
Right.
So my passion is to bring dignity to people outside of the church. And so what I did was, I've been involved in the National Basketball League here for 17 years, and I was a chaplain there. Wow. And I was standing there one night. It's just like the NBA in America, that sort of thing. And so I was standing there one night. I stand next to the bench. They don't give me a seat. Apparently that's good for me. So I was standing there, and I noticed all the corporate boxes, and I noticed that they were all filled with rich business people, and they got all the food and drink they wanted. And I thought to myself, why is it that only rich people get good things? And so what I did was I went back to my board and I said, hey, board, that missions money we got sitting there? I'm going to use it to buy a corporate box at the basketball. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to put everybody in the corporate box that everybody else thinks doesn't deserve to be there. So we went and found all the homeless people. We do off the street homeless youth ministry. So we brought all them in. I got Bernardos, orphans, literally you name it. Anybody that the community thought doesn't deserve it, we put them in, and we gave them the night of their life. But here's what we did: we didn't splash Lighthouse all over the front of the corporate box. We weren't wearing shirts and pointing at ourselves. And to me, we weren't doing it for those reasons. We're doing it to love on people. But here's what happened. It went so well, as in I got so many great reports from these people who said, this was the best night of my life. I made sure my basketball team were high-fiving them and sweating on them, and they're getting hit with basketballs during the game and all that great stuff. And it was so great. I went back to my board, and for another 4 years, we bought a corporate box. In fact, we spent nearly $100,000 on corporate boxes. And now, but what happened was this, and I never did that to be known. But what I discovered was the whole stadium started to whisper, have you heard that corporate box is full of homeless people? And they all started to whisper. And after about 2 years, I had people coming up to me, and they call me the Rev. So they say, hey, Rev, do you know those people are homeless? I said, yeah, I heard that. Well, who's putting homeless people in there? Well, I don't know. I'm not sure who's putting homeless people in there. And so what I found was that if you're truly going to engage your community, you have to get out of your church, and you have to be driven to bring dignity to people. And the key to community engagement is you have to first become known. Now, you don't go out with the motivation to be known, but when you go and serve your community starts talking about you. And so for us, as we look back over the years, we've just constantly done unusual things that bring dignity to all sorts of people. And I've got to tell you, Joanna, we did a survey because we're thinking about rebranding. It's been Lighthouse for 50 years, and we were thinking about rebranding. So I hired a research company, a non-Christian one, to research and ask the question across my city, and we're the 10th largest city in Australia. What do they think of when they think of Lighthouse, which is the name of our church? And did you know that after 10 years of community work like I just described, 77% of my community said that Lighthouse is an organisation that helps people.
Wow.
77% of my community. And we could not believe it. We did not realize that we'd had that sort of impact. And the second thing they said about us was that we're different to any other church we know. And so that's why, actually, if you look at our slogan, we're Lighthouse, a different light is our hashtag. And so, again, I think motivation is important. I think, as we say, Canadians and Australians are similar. Australians hate people that they just dislike self-promotion. And so we did not go in to make ourselves the most noticeable church in the community. And we, to this day, 18 years on, still do not do that in the community.
Yeah.
We just love people.
And a lot of that for you is it's not about the building. I mean, are you using us even as the example of the box? I love that. I didn't know that story. I love that story. That's such a basic example. It's an amazing example. I've never heard of this before, but such a clear example for people to say, oh, I can do that. People who are listening can start to think of how that can translate in their own context, in their own neighborhoods and their own cities.
Yeah.
But when it's not about the building, how do you talk to us about your building? I'm thinking about, like, we're in like a digital age now. So a lot of churches are trying to figure out, okay, hold on. We've said before it wasn't about the building, but now we're actually beginning to mean it because of a digital world where people are connecting to their sermon preaching and music and all this kind of stuff online. What do you use your building for?
Exactly. So,
or do you have more than one building?
We do. Well, we have 3 locations and we own 2 buildings. Now, here's what we've done. And I tell churches all around the world to do this. Don't buy or build churches. Buy or build community centres that are open 7 days a week, to which you have church in 1 day a week. I mean, quite honestly, it's bad stewardship to have a building that's full and alive on Sundays and empty and dead on Mondays. So for example, we bought this building that was, again, I got to admit, it's accidental. I originally bought it to make a church out of it about 10 years ago. It was one of the most popular, iconic dancing venues in our city. Okay. And everybody, not cool dancing, like line dancing, right? Like bush dancing, to country music. So, it's kind of, I'm a bit embarrassed about it. And nobody will admit that they grew up dancing there, but everybody did.
So this is like what we might call like country music?
Exactly, right.
Okay.
So what used to happen is you'd turn up on a Saturday night, they'd have a pig on the spit, and it'd fit 1,200 people line dancing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, it lay dormant for years, but we bought it. We're going to turn it into a church. But in the evolution of this thinking, about 5 years after we bought it, we said, you know what? Church is the last thing we need to do in that building. So we turned it into a 7-day-a-week community centre, available for in fact, we renovated it and gave it back to the community, if you like. And so you can go there any time of the week. It's cafe, restaurant, it's rentable spaces. You can get married there. You can have your business meetings there. You can have anything from a 1-seat business desk with Wi-Fi to 600 people for a wedding if you want. It's that kind of venue. Wow. But the thing with it is this, what we didn't know was, so we often build our own church, cold, designed for us, and we hope people will come. Well, we accidentally bought the most popular building in the city. When we opened the building, we caused a traffic jam down the freeway because everybody in the community heard that their favourite building was reopening again. We didn't call it Lighthouse because it was called the Woolshed, been called that for 35 years. So we'd be stupid to call it Lighthouse. We called it the Woolshed, and we opened it just like it was all those years ago. And I tell you, I listened to people as they came that first day, and I could hear people talking about the memories and the stories of growing up. And that's the key. Let's segue to digital for a moment. What is because you've got to hold that thought about buildings. Buildings have to be completely different. But when it comes to digital, we have the perfect opportunity to tell our everyday faith stories about what God is doing at work, what He's doing when I'm at sport, when I'm doing my hobby, when I'm going fishing, because God is in all those places. And so here's what we taught our church. Look, I'm sure this is similar in Canada. I do a bit of a thing where I tease churches about their Instagrams or their social media, Let me give you an example. I can tell you, and you tell me if this is what Canadian church Instagram looks like.
All right.
So this is what it looks like in Australia. So on Sunday, we see all these photos of raised hands with a bit of smoke in the room, coloured lights. The room's dark because nobody wants to see how many people are missing. And so that's the photo. And so I know because we've taken those photos. And so what happens is it'll say something like, how great was Sunday? And so we're like, that's good. Well, that's what we did Sunday. We should post that. That's a good thing. But here's what Monday looks like. It's a slightly different raised hand from a different angle of Sunday. And the post says, how great was yesterday? And then Tuesday, there's a picture of maybe the worship leader or the guitarist or the preacher. And Tuesday says, I'm just sitting here reflecting on how great Sunday was. And then Wednesday, you come to Wednesday, but Wednesday is blank. There's nothing. Nobody, you know why? Because it's too far from last Sunday and too far from the next Sunday. But thank God for Thursday, because Thursday we can start to count down to Sunday. Next thing you know, we see another great picture of a hand in the air, looking forward to Pastor's sermon series on how to reach the community on Sunday. Make sure you're there. Friday, we get the countdown. Only 2 days to go. Saturday, can't wait for tomorrow. Yet we miss the perfect opportunity to digitally tell the story of what God looks like every day of the week. And we have convinced not only ourselves, but we have convinced the community outside our church that church is a building that you go to on Sundays, but church is not a building. Church is a group of people that exist everywhere, all the time, in every sphere of life.
Right. So talk to us about work. I just love this because, of course, church is run by church professionals in both of our countries. In some places, like I know when I've had opportunity to work and serve in places like France or Ukraine or some other countries, Thailand, in Turkey, Christians, they have other jobs, and they're not professional Christians. I mean, the pastors and the leaders in church, this is a part-time thing that they do on the side of their professional life. But in our countries, a lot of people who run church, they think about Sunday primarily because their whole work life revolves around it. But for most people who go to church, they work somewhere else. Most of their brain and their heart is somewhere else. Talk to us about this idea of work, like work as unfulfilling, work as demeaning. Where did this come from?
So unfortunately, the Western Church has bought into a concept called dualism. Dualism says some things are more spiritual than others. And so what's happened is, again, I'm a full-time pastor, so I'm a bit of a weird creature, right? I'm a full-time pastor who loves Mondays more than Sundays, but that's just me. But I think what we've done our people a disservice, we didn't intend to, but because we desperately want to see in a declining era of church attendance, we want to see more people come to church, we over-talk Sundays and under-talk Mondays. And what it does is it teaches the school teacher who attends church on Sunday that what they do, it's spiritual, but it doesn't appear quite as spiritual as what we're doing Sunday. And you're going to hear from the church if you miss Sundays, but you're not going to hear from the church if you miss Mondays. So it's kind of like a subtle... So here's what we say. So dualism brings a couple of wrong concepts. For example, it brings higher calling mentality. So I have taught my church that my job is not the highest calling. But again, subtly, we have taught our church people that the highest calling is to leave your job and to do what I do, become a pastor. Actually, there's two things. The highest calling is pastor of a local church or missionary, right? And if you could just become a
missionary
pastor,
somewhere else, like far away.
Somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
So this is a question I constantly ask my church. Can you live a spiritually fulfilled life if you never leave your job and work for a church? Can you lead a spiritually fulfilled life if you never travel to another country and do a 2-week mission? Now everyone answers, oh, of course, but actually we don't imply that. And so here's what happens is, unintentionally, we tell people on Sundays that the highest calling is missionary and pastor. The second highest calling is Christian counselor or social worker. Christian social worker. So the Christian social worker, if he works hard enough, he can get my job eventually and get to the top of the echelon. But here we've got this lowest echelon, right? This is the poor business person, the tradesman, the school teacher. That she's on the third rung, and the only way she can feel spiritual is she has to do a Bible study at work on Tuesdays. Right? Now, there's nothing wrong with a Bible study at work on Tuesdays, right?
Yeah.
But there's only something wrong with it if you're having a Bible study at work so that you feel spiritual about your job. You should be able to go to work Tuesday, not have a Bible study, and feel completely called, completely spiritual, and sense the presence of God in that workplace. And so we have just level the playing field. I stand up almost every Sunday in front of my congregation and I say this. I say, it's so great that you came today. We reckon Sundays are important for your development, but I want you to know it's not the most important day of the week. That tomorrow is where you're going to meet God and do the very thing you were made to do. And you should do it with all your heart, all your life. And you should look out for God, because according to Ephesians 2:10, He's already gone ahead of you. He's already prepared good things in advance for you to do, and all you need to do is keep your eyes and ears open.
And so what does discipleship look like in your church if you're discipling people in their work?
Exactly.
Is there any formal way that you're trying to train people in their spiritually develop people for their work?
So in a true Australian way, we like to keep things simple. So I've taught my church a couple of things. Number one, that discipleship is coffee with intention. I don't know about you guys, but we love our coffee here in Australia. We're always always having coffee with somebody. So I just taught our church, listen, everyone's scared of evangelism. Everybody's scared of what does it mean to disciple somebody. What about you do this, that when you sit having coffee with your non-Christian friend, I do this with every non-Christian person I meet with every week. Whatever we're talking about, I end the conversation with this. Hey, man, that was what you said today, I just loved, and I so appreciate you telling me that. Is there anything in the next 2 weeks that I could pray for you about? Something you need, something that's troubling you? You know what? I've done that to hundreds of non-Christians, and I have never had one person say no, ever. And here's what I do. When I get back with them, or I teach my church, when they meet with them again in 2 weeks, we just say, hey, how'd you go with that? I've been praying for you. Did anything change? Is something different? And you cannot believe how many times the stories of people say, my friend who doesn't know God said things are different, things are better. So that's a simple way we do it. The second thing we do is this. We teach people you only ever have to disciple two people. We talk about having a person on our left and a person on our right. The person on our left is the non-Christian that we are praying for and deliberately meeting with to bring towards Christ. Once they come to Christ, we move them to our right, and it's now our responsibility to help grow them in Christ. But you always just have one on your left, one on your right. So I guess the concept of demystifying many of the spiritual truths that we've, I think, got out of the reach of the everyday Christian.
Yeah. I mean, and for a lot of Christians, of course, discipleship is viewed as their own discipleship, like who is discipling me, as opposed to who am I discipling. Like for a lot of Christians, we're called to go and make disciples, the Great Commission, but I think for a lot of Christians, of course, they're not discipling anyone. And in some ways, I think it's because maybe they haven't been properly discipled themselves into how to do it. I think a lot of people find it so intimidating, but what you're talking about is a very simple, low-key, spend time together over coffee kind of process.
So my current wicked problem that I'm having to solve, I just became the state president for our movement here. So I'm now responsible for leading over 330 churches here in the state of New South Wales in Australia. My wicked problem I have at the moment, and I mean that in a righteous kind of way, is that we are currently an event-based movement. I think like any great Pentecostal movement where it's all about Sundays. The wicked problem I'm going to solve is how do we as a movement over the next 10 years, how do we disciple our whole community? We're used to discipling Christians, but to me, when I read the Bible, Jesus actually discipled people from the day he met them, not from the day they came to a temple.
Right.
Whereas, so isn't it interesting that all of our resource, all of our action, all of our energy, we put into a person when they get to us, but actually we need to put all of our resource, all of our energy into people the day we meet them in the street, the day we meet them at work. And so you can just see we become too church and Sunday centric. And what's happening is that because that system is not working anymore, we have to get out of the walls of our church. You know what, Joanna, I think of it this way. Because of our cultural bias, we read when the Apostle Paul planted churches in Ephesus, and he planted them right in the marketplace. We immediately think he planted those churches in the marketplace because it will be easy for the Christians to get there. But of course, he didn't plant them in the marketplace to get Christians there. He planted it in the marketplace because it was easy for Christians to get into the marketplace so that they could see people come to know Jesus. But in our cultural bias, we plant churches because we want easy access for people that we know already want to come. And so we've just turned it all on its head and flipped it all the way around.
You're talking in your book, and there's this quick quote here. It says, God has gifted us with a developmental mandate to use our soul, such as our mind, our imagination, our creativity at work. I love this idea of using all of ourself in the work. And do you have any more stories or examples of how that's playing out, maybe for people that are in your church community or elsewhere? Some creative ways that people have translated this, thank God it's Monday.
Yeah, I think we missed. So we, again, like you, Joanna, you're a creative person. And often, again, we say, she's creative. We need to grab Joanna from her job and get her on staff at church so she can do more creative things on our platform and our church media. But I can't think of a better place. So I was in business myself. In my transition from builder to pastor, my church actually couldn't afford it. It was interesting. They offered me a job as youth pastor about 25 years ago and said, the good news is we want you to be youth pastor. The bad news is we can't pay you. So I nearly didn't take the job, but I really felt the Holy Spirit say, no, a church doesn't own your calling. God owns your calling. The job's right. The money's up to God. And so I created a building consultancy business, kind of pre-purchase. So if you're going to buy a house, I go and do an inspection on it and give you a report. But what I found as I did that business was there was lots of people doing it, but I started to get innovative and creative ideas for that business that I would never have thought of, I believe, if I wasn't a God follower. And I could hear the Holy Spirit whispering business ideas that actually, fast forward 4 years, that business was going so well. It was making so much money that I had to rethink the idea of going into be a youth pastor because it was so successful. And I think, the simple illustration, I think I use it in my book, that God makes all the animals. He could have named them himself, but in the soul of Adam, he had created creativity and adventure. And imagine how fun it would have been to call a zebra for the first time. And, I just think that we should be going into our workspaces completely convinced that we have the upper hand, that we have an edge, that people who don't, we're not better than them, but we're better equipped than them. And if we could lean into the whisper of the Holy Spirit on business ideas, scientific discovery, educational breakthrough, then that's how we'll transform our world. We won't transform our world because we get them to church. We'll transform the world because Christians recognize we're using 10% of our creative and innovative power. We just got to find the presence of God midweek and utilize the gifts that we've been given.
Yeah, I love this. I love what you said, but we're not better than them, but we're better equipped than them. I often think of that when people are going through a crisis. That's where it starts to show what is the equipment that they have to handle a trauma, a tragedy, bad news, a loss of a job, sickness, whatever it may be. And I think for Christians, we're actually amazingly positioned to have some hope and some health and some perspective in those moments in life that other people don't have. And we offer that. That's a gift that we get to offer the world. And we're all, when we go through loss or tragedy, we're all the same in that sense. We're not better than anyone else. That pain is pain is pain. We all know it.
I think the world think that we think we're better. So we're very quick to say that we have the same problems, the same challenges. That God doesn't exist in us to remind us of our problems, but to help us through those problems. And, one of the basketballers, he's a great friend of mine now. He's actually retired. He played on our team for about 5 years. He totally was like the crankiest guy on the team, right? In fact, I thought when he turned up on the team, I just thought the guy must hate me because he never smiles and never. And I found out when I married him and his wife 3 years later at the wedding, one of the best man got up and said, when this guy joined the team, I thought he hated me. He never smiled. I thought, oh, thank goodness it wasn't just me. He just was his personality. But you know what? I tell you something. All I did was I kept loving him. I kept befriending him. I didn't let any of those, I wonder if he doesn't like me. I didn't let any of my insecurities about what he thinks about me. I just loved him, loved him, loved him. He rang me for coffee one day and he said, Rev, I literally cannot sleep at night. I have like night terrors. I wake up like in absolute fear. So you know what I did? He's a complete non-Christian. In fact, he thinks he's an atheist. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to teach you how to pray. He said, what? I said, yeah, we're going to learn how to pray because prayer changes things. He said, okay. So I said, here's what I want you to do.
Yeah, if he's feeling desperate, maybe he'll try something new. Yeah,
of course. And it's just about not making it weird. So I said, it's really simple. At night, before you go to bed, I want you to pray, Jesus, help me to sleep well and not have night terrors, right? That's literally it. So I don't see him for about 3 weeks, and he makes an appointment to have a coffee. He comes in. I've never seen this cranky guy so excited. He says, Rev, I got to tell you, I've been praying that prayer you told me, and I have not had a single night terror in the last 3 weeks. He said, I am sleeping like a baby.
Wow.
And so we got to make what we know is powerful, and we got to help people put it into their everyday life.
Yeah, and it's an active translation I see that you're doing over and over. You're trying to communicate in a way that people can understand and access. We've made it more too difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. So we have a thing called a language culture guide in our church. Actually, my team wrote it. I didn't write it. It was a fun process. We laughed a lot. But we've got a list of about 50 words that we no longer use.
What are some of those words?
So we don't say things like, on Sundays, we don't say, well, there's just such a great sense of the presence of God here today. So we say, it's true, it's what we want, but if you're a non-Christian, you haven't got a clue what we're talking about. So we rephrase all of our Christian jargon in a way that people, we treat like everybody's new, first time. I teach my worship leaders, if I've got to preach or speak a relevant message every Sunday, then I don't want to hear you get up and as a worship leader and say the same thing. We just want to give all glory and all honor to God. They say the same thing every week. I said, that just shows me you didn't meet with God this week. Because I've found when I meet with God, he speaks fresh things to me. And he speaks new things to me. And you need to present with the new things God's been saying to you in normal English, in a way that every person can understand. And so my team reckon, because I'm been around for a while, they reckon I'm the best. I break most of the cultural language guides. And so I can see them glaring at me on the front row every time I say it.
In our church, we call it the hot or not list.
Right. Okay,
yeah, and there's some words or phrases as well that just sound a little bit weird or creepy, or they have a different connotation. Like even a word like sanctuary, for example. It's not true everywhere, but in our context, a sanctuary, you would think of a bird sanctuary. It's not. Well,
what about this?
Yeah.
What about I just want to I want to be touched by God?
Yeah,
right?
That can sound sort of creepy.
Culture. We don't want to be touched by anybody.
Oh man, it's true.
So it's a discipline. You know what? I notice it a lot because we've been working on it for 10 years, really just keeping our language authentic we're ruthless around jargon. And when I travel to churches, I mean, I love traveling to churches, but I tell you, I get a shock when I listen to people talk on the platform. Sometimes I think, I've been in church all my life, and I have not got a clue what you're talking about. There's so much jargon. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, in our current church in order to get us to reach people that really, quite honestly, would love God if we could just present God in an authentic and real way every day.
Yeah. I often talk about. I think the church has a PR problem. Jesus is great, but this public relations issue. How can we help as communicators, as leaders in Christian circles, to consider more thoughtfully, more missionally, how we're being seen by other people. Like if we're using unhelpful language, throw it away. If the clothes we wear are if we're dressed up too much, or the collar of some traditions is intimidating for people. No, in other places, the collar can help. It might attract people to you. If you're sitting in the local city bus and you see someone with a religious collar on, it might actually make people want to come up and talk to you. It depends on the context, but whatever is hindering, let's get rid of it.
It's true. Well, one of the way to, and I encourage all senior pastors, particularly if they're listening, I know they're busy. I know, particularly if they're bivocational, they're trying to work, but you know what? Just like we tithe our finance, my encouragement to pastors is to tithe 10% of your 40-hour week, maybe you're doing 50, and go and do something in the community yourself. So for me to be chaplain, when I started as chaplain, I nearly didn't do it because I said to myself, I'm a busy guy, I've got a fairly big church, I should delegate that out. Well, it would have been the mistake of my life because actually engaging with that community of basketballers, and it turned out not to be just basketballers, it was their partners, it was the sponsors. There's a group of fans that stand near me that give me religious symbols because they want me to. Some of them asked me could you pray tonight, Rev? I've put $20 on the team winning. And I've had people from the audience sneak over and hand me $20. Rev, put that in the plate on Sunday. That's because you prayed for me and I won the bet tonight. And it's just this whole. It's just taught me so much. And you know what? I'm the senior pastor of a large church, but you know what? My main role on game night is that I look after the sweaty towels and I fill up the water bottles. And I can tell you that in Australian culture. Now, just this year, after 17 years of being the Rev or the chaplain, they gave me one of the highest leadership roles in the organisation. They asked me to be a leader of healthy cultural organisation. And so I'm responsible within the whole basketball organisation to build healthy team culture. Now, listen, I wouldn't have got that job if I'd arrived like I need to be treated special. And so I always tell churches when I visit, I say, did you know I've got a TV ministry? You can watch me live on Fox Sport anytime. You just have to look really hard because I'm behind the bench. I'm sometimes under the chair trying to get one of the towels that the players threw on the floor because they couldn't be bothered giving it to me. And there I am filling up water bottles and wiping sweaty floor. And it's because I do that they want me to lead at a higher level. I tell you, here's the thought. We don't need more platforms. We need more people with towels. We need more people and pastors who are willing to serve their community, even if those people never come to church. We just got to serve them.
Right. Oh, I love this. This is a rich conversation. I think people are going to want to find you. Now, in Canada, actually, one of the reasons we're having the conversation is because you're coming to Canada. You're doing a number of dates across. So if people are in Canada, they'll be able to find you, this spring 2019 as you travel around a little bit.
And don't forget, Jonah, we've got our there's Instagram. So it's TGIM _online, but we also have our website with all of our, you can watch some webinars there and some great stories from people who are doing Mondays great, but it's TGIM-movement.com.
Awesome.
TGIM-movement.com. And, actually one of the things that we're promoting, not only can people obviously purchase the book, Thank God It's Monday, which is really the story of the transition of Lighthouse, our church, from a revival-focused church to a community engaging church, and how we did that, what we accidentally discovered along the way.
I love it.
But really, the truth is, what I want to do is, what I've done is I've put together a church community engagement pack. So you can buy the book. We've got small group studies. Maybe we didn't get time today, but we've got this giraffe. We give a community award.
Oh no, let's talk about this. It's on
Okay.
my list of things. I'd love it. This is a cool thing. Tell us about the giraffe and the red glasses. People can't see, but you're wearing red glasses right now.
Well, I'm wearing these. I actually need these, but of course I got them red anyway. But so look, what you've got to do is you've got to find non-weird, non-Christian ways, if you like, to engage with community that seems fun. So we came up with the idea that just like we seem to stick our neck out for people in community, like the basketball example I gave with the corporate box, we found this little fluffy giraffe. We call him Jerry. And we give him out to people in the community, so not our church community, in the community outside our church, for people who stick their neck out for others. And what it means is so the key to community engagement is to make heroes out of everyday people that just walk the streets of our community. But here's the weird thing. Jerry the giraffe has become famous. Jerry the giraffe is in our local newspapers. He has been on TV and the local news. People want to win the Stick Your Neck Out award.
Wow.
And so the Lord Mayor of our city has been presented with Jerry the giraffe, and he couldn't believe his eyes when he won it, And we have businesses that I have franchise of millions of dollars who get excited when we turn up with a Jerry award,
Wow.
And then the red glasses are just a simple idea that we wanted to empower, firstly, our church people. So what we would do is say, listen, buy yourself a pair of red glasses. When you go to work, we talk about the digital media, turn up to work and take a photograph with your boss, with somebody you work with, and rave about how much you love your job or how much you love about. And so we say that our red glasses are for people who see their Mondays differently. And so again, if you look at our social media at Lighthouse, you might get, we don't do it, you might get a shot of Sunday. Mostly you'll get people on Sundays eating food, but Mondays is our biggest social media day. And that's where all of our people go to work, wear red glasses, and hashtag Thank God It's Monday. And so we want people globally to join the Thank God It's Monday movement by going to work and talking about what they love about their job and why they feel it. So here's what I do when I travel around the globe. If I'm sitting in a restaurant and I get great customer service, I pull out my red glasses and I say to the waitress or the waiter, I say, listen, man, you gave us great service today and we love people who love their jobs. Would you mind? I've got these glasses here, and these glasses are for people who love what they do. I'm going to give you these. You can wear them whenever you want, but I need to get a selfie with you, and I'm going to tell all of my followers about you because you love what you do. And
Awesome.
it's just a connecting point, and
I love it.
It wins people over.
It's fun. It's creative, and it as you say, like the idea of senior leadership in your city being excited about getting a stuffed giraffe because of what it represents, and that it doesn't have to be something elaborate, or it can be very playful and silly and cheap.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing. So we've put together, we would call it the Church Community Engagement Toolkit. And it literally gives you, you get 10 books, you can get facilitator guides, and you can do a study through your small group. You get Jerry the giraffe, who's more famous than any human in Australia. you get sets of red glasses ready for people to go into action on Monday. And honestly, my heart is that if we can equip churches to think more about Mondays and Sundays, then I think we've got a chance at transforming our world for Christ.
I love it. Well, as we close, I don't always do this, but Paul, I would love if you would pray for people in their workplace. Would you just pray a blessing over people in their work?
Absolutely, we will. Father, I just thank you for what you told us in Ephesians 2:10, that you made us as your magnificent workmanship. And God, more than that, you didn't just make us for incredible Sundays, God, you made us for great Mondays. And I pray for that person that feels like their work is not significant. I pray for that person that feels like they're just turning up and serving coffee and it's going nowhere. Lord, I pray that in this moment, they would see that in Christ, nothing is purposeless and that everything we do has the opportunity for purpose. And I pray that as they serve coffee again, I pray that they would see the people they're serving. I pray that they would see the needs that people have. I pray, Lord, that they would literally see lost people everywhere and they would change the way they see their job. I pray, Lord, that every person that walks into their Monday, their Tuesday, their Wednesday, that they would say, what I do is where God's got me right now for his purposes. And I pray it would change the way. Lord, I pray they won't change their job, but I pray that they change the way they see their job. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Yeah. Amen. Well, Pastor Paul, thank you. I feel you've encouraged us, you've made us laugh, you've inspired us today with some amazing stories. In all the show notes are going to have the links to everything we've just talked about for your content and for social media and to see you. And also we're going to show the dates of where you are in Canada for Canadian people to try and find you.
I'll get Renee, my EA, to make sure you got that. But Graf Martin have probably got that as well.
Yes. Yes, so, awesome.
That's great. Well, Joanna, I look forward. We'll probably catch up for a coffee.
Well, thanks so much, Paul, for that great conversation. Hey, he's going to be back in North America later into this winter, so follow him on social media. The link's in the show notes if you want to track with him and see when he might be around your area. Next up, we have just a few more episodes of season 2. Next week, we have Jenny Randall joining us. She's an author, a creative entrepreneur, a business owner, and this is so cool. She's actually won an Emmy. That's right, an Emmy for her work in filmmaking. So she's got a ton of insights for us next week. You're going to love the conversation with Jenny Randall. And hey, as for me, I want to thank our sponsor, Wycliffe College. I'm so grateful for their partnership on this podcast, helping to make season 2 possible. And I would love for you to check them out. They're really affordable, surprisingly affordable compared to a lot of other schools. And they have a lot of ways that you can study, whether that's full-time, part-time, online, maybe in person. Hey, check out wycliffecollege.ca/wordmadedigital for more on that. And next week, we'll see you with Jenny Randall.
Thanks for listening to the Word Made Digital podcast with Joanna LaFleur. If you like this content, hit subscribe and share this episode with your friends. Head over to joannalafleur.com for more free tools, interviews, and media for creatives and communicators. We'd love to help you be the best you can be at communicating the best news in the world.